right. Well, at this time, we'll call to order the Riverside City Council meeting for Monday, May 4th, 2026 at 6:01 p.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Gaby?
Here.
Mr. Maxfield?
Present.
Ms. Angel Patterson?
Here.
Ms. Frida Patterson?
Here.
Mayor Williams?
Here. All members present, no need to excuse any absent members. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from the Deputy Mayor and a second from Mr. Maxfield. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. If you're able, please join us to rise and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we have a few guests with us tonight for presentations on city-related items, so I will turn it over to the city manager.
Good evening. First, for our presentations, we're fortunate, the city's been working for quite some time with Wolpert on the Woodman Gateway project. And this evening, Nate Fisher is here from Wolpert to give council a presentation on where we are with that project. So Nate, if you would like to come up. And Cody has his presentation, and we will load that now.
Real quick, can
Thank
everybody
you.
in the audience hear us okay? Okay,
There's a
we'll turn it up a little bit.
feedback or something. I don't think they were on.
I think they were on. I heard an echo, but I wasn't sure.
Is this better? Oh, it's still an echo.
Ooh, that's echoing.
That's too much. So the Reader's Digest condensed version is, this is Nate Fisher from Wolpert, and he's here to give a presentation tonight on the Woodman Gateway project.
All right, let's see how I sound.
Oh, that's also not great.
Okay, ish.
Ish.
Echoing.
A little echoey, but is it because of the recording, maybe? Is there feedback from the YouTube recording?
How does that sound now? That better?
Yes.
Yeah, that's better.
I sound better?
Turn that one down.
I think
There's
you're
no
good.
feedback. I won't say you sound
Ish.
better.
Dang.
All right, appreciate you all having me out here tonight. As I go through things, if you have some questions, some of you have seen some of this before, some of you haven't, please stop me. I'm happy to answer some questions, but do kind of want to keep things moving, as I know you guys have a fairly full slate here tonight. So, let's see am I clicking or?
Attempting to.
There you go.
Okay, all right. So got three sections to kind of run through with you here tonight. So overview, we're going to talk about the work that we've completed. That's going to largely focus on the SS4A action plan that was developed. Our current work is going to talk about a feasibility study that we are underway performing. It's going to look at some changes that have happened from a traffic perspective in the area. As we were wrapping up the SS4A project, Wright Pat issued a return to work, so that changed our traffic volumes and projections. So we're taking a step to reevaluate those and kind of do a little deeper dive into some of the concepts that were developed during the study. That work is being funded through a congressional earmark that Congressman Turner was able to secure for the city. Those funds flow through ODOT. So we have ODOT administration over the project as well. And then lastly, next steps, we'll kind of talk big picture schedule, both for our feasibility study and then kind of best guess we can take at a crystal ball right now as to when you might see a shovel, in the ground in any kind of construction. All right. High-level overview of the SS4A. Work began on this late in 23 when the city received their award. August 25, we completed the study. One thing, I understand a number of you were at the MVRPC dinner on Thursday. I took a note that Brian Williams, during his presentation, highlighted the importance of the SS4A program, and that Riverside, along with other cities such as Xenia, the city of Dayton, and then MVRPC as a whole, all have safety action plans. So, commend you guys for taking the step to develop that plan. Not only does it give you an insight into the safety of your community and of this corridor, but it also sets you up for future funding through the SS4A federal grant process. All right, so a couple of slides to touch on. These are posters that we had developed for the public involvement meetings with the projects, but they kind of highlight the corridor and where the project is. So this safety action plan focus began at US 35, not necessarily including the interchange, but then extended north along Woodman to the city corp limit, basically, which is just beyond Springfield Street there. The right picture is what we call a heat map. So it is taking all of the crashes and kind of concentrating them down. The brighter the color, the yellow, the more crashes you see at a given location. So we saw a couple of hot spots, not surprisingly, a lot of them along the Woodman corridor, but then some things happening in some other intersections, but really not to the level that we were seeing along the Woodman corridor. When we took these to the public, we tried to help them wrap their mind around, the types of things we were looking to discuss. We recognize that Woodman, the context of Woodman, changes as you go through it. So you kind of have the interchange segment down there at 35, progresses north to the section that I believe, did it just get final pavement maybe last week?
He was getting
or-
it today.
Getting it.
Yeah.
Getting it.
To that section through there, and then kind of get into a little bit of a residential section. You've got your commercial area around the Airway Shopping Center, and then you have the north section up here by City Hall with the reverse curves and the concrete barrier. So, the images over to the right kind of depict what the corridor could look like in the future. Just trying to help get everyone's mind wrapped around the fact that, hey, we can make a change here. Does not need to look like Woodman does today. And a couple of other prints out of the SS4A action plan. I know these are small. The left graphic, though, is highlighting crashes, the fatal crashes, and I'll point out that this crash map shows crashes from 2020 through 2022. And within the focus segment from 35 to Springfield Street, there were no fatalities at the time within that study area, and I'll come back to that here a little later. The right map is highlighting speeds. Again, it's difficult to see on the scale, but there is a red section along the north section of our study area where we have reverse curves, the barrier walls. Those are the sections where you're seeing the higher speeds along the corridor. And the orange sections are 36 to 45 mile per hour range. The red section gets you 46 and up. So we took this information out to the public in June, hosted the meeting at the Mad River Local Schools. It was a pretty warm day that day, if I remember. We had good turnout at the meeting, and I would say online we had an even better response and presence. So we developed a website that allowed people to provide feedback. You could put a pin anywhere on the map and say, hey, I saw this happen here, can you look at pedestrian safety here? I find it impossible to turn out of here. We took all of that feedback and used that to inform some of the findings within the study. So part of the study highlights, sorry, lost a slide. So policy and process changes. So this is just highlighted as part of the safety action plan. There are policies that get developed. Council passed a resolution, to support the SS4A process and supporting, working towards Vision Zero. So trying to eliminate fatalities and deaths on our roadways, fatalities and serious injury crashes. This is the slide I was looking for. So strategy and project project selections. So the SAFE system, the principles that we're really focusing in on are those getting to zero deaths, reducing serious injury crashes, recognizing that humans make mistakes and they're vulnerable, and that safety is something that we can be proactive about. So elements that we're looking to implement are safety for all road users, not just our vehicular users, but our walkers, our bikers. And then, making sure that our roadways are designed to operate at safe speeds, at the speeds that they are designed for, and that they portray that context to the folks using it. And then allow some ability to accommodate mistakes, because inevitably those happen. So I'm going to step through a couple of concepts that were developed as part of the SS4A. These are concepts. They are things that we are revisiting as we work through the feasibility study. So you're going to see a lot of roundabouts. Roundabouts promote safety within signalized, what are typically signalized intersections. As we go through the feasibility study, those intersections are being evaluated again as roundabouts and as signals. So we're not set that we will do a roundabout every single place. We're still evaluating those. We have those new traffic volumes and new safety data, quite frankly, to evaluate everything against. So I'm going to start to the south and kind of attempt to work north here. So in the commercial section, the bottom right image there shows some possible roundabouts, one at the shopping center over on the right, and another one over at Bayside, and I believe it's Longview. That intersection location was something that came up during the public involvement. There was a lot of discussion about people kind of U-turning within Bayside because they have trouble getting out from the west side. They would go down to Bayside, try to U-turn. There wasn't a great place to make that turn to go back north. And then also it came up, connect Longview into Woodman. So this was a high-level concept that we looked at, and then we took these concepts and kind of advanced them into a little bit more engineering. So this is that Bayside Longview intersection, trying to see what a roundabout that is drawn in might look at. Would it fit? What kind of challenges would this present to us? So this is something that we would continue to be evaluating and looking at as the feasibility study progresses. Still kind of looking down at that same area, the zoom in that we had a second ago is the roundabout on the left. And then, we considered trying to do roundabouts at Airway Shopping Center and even Airway. I can tell you the one at Airway, the layout that is shown here, it simply won't work. We have that skewed intersection in there with the geometrics. We're not able to control speeds the way that we need to within that roundabout to make that setup work. And then going with a signal at Airway and then a roundabout at the Airway Shopping Center, the queuing through there is going to be a challenge. So we see those we're going to look at them again with the study, but I see those probably trending to both staying signalized intersections through there. Sorry, go back one. Out in front of Pettibone and the other commercial developments in there, right now today, there is a large swath of asphalt. You can kind of get in and out anywhere. It doesn't provide good access management. It doesn't provide good, safe walking conditions through there. So we looked at kind of a layout to see if we could do something that would allow us to still maintain some parking along the frontage, but allow a way to slip people off into there, control that access a little better, but then also still allow for movements in and out. So that's, again, an option that we'll be looking at with the feasibility study to see if we can continue to make something like that work, or if there are reasons that preclude that from working, we'll be looking at just kind of keeping driveways, but still doing what we can to control access. Reconnection of Old Harshman to Woodman. So for those, I guess that know, Woodman was the relocation of Harshman long ago, and Old Harshman was cut off from Woodman. This came up as something that the city was happy with. Not the city, sorry. The school was happy with. They had the connection there to the school so they could turn around, and then also provides for shared use paths on the west side. We can provide some connectivity to the park, connect that down to facilities down to the south, and then also adding sidewalks still on the east side. So the challenge here is trying to get all of this to fit without touching the fence on Wright Patterson's property. So we think we can slide something through there. It'll just be a challenge in the end. So then two concepts we looked at the intersection of Springfield Street and Woodman and Harshman. So we looked at a roundabout option there that would eliminate the interchange, and then we also looked at a traffic signal option in there. Either option is possible. We'll be continuing to look at those, but we're also going to look at it as if it stays at the current interchange location. There is a heavy, would be southbound to eastbound movement that occurs with folks trying to get to the base. I think it's gate 1A up there off of Springfield Street. 1B, thank you, Area B. Off of Springfield Street, those two, that movement is a very heavy movement, and with the changes in traffic, we need to reevaluate and see if both signal and roundabout are still options. If they aren't, we're going to look at kind of maybe some different interchange configurations and just see kind of what might work in that area. And then still kind of looking in that same area, we have the interchange or the roundabout down there at Old Springfield Street. This slide is just kind of depicting the curve area, trying to get a road section in there that better conveys the context of the roadway. We know the barrier wall's falling apart. That needs to be dealt with. Can we replace that with a grass median appropriate for a 45-mile-per-hour roadway? That still provides separation between the directions of travel, but better conveys that, hey, this is not the interstate. This is not an expressway. You need to drive at the proper speed. So coming out of the SS4A, we had some phasing that got developed at a very high level. This turned into what is now the Woodman Gateway project. So we had, I think, 5 different segments along Woodman that were, I guess, broken out from everything else.
Hold on, give me a second. We got some technical difficulties. Give me just one moment here.
All right.
Apologies about that. Give that one a shot, see if that's working.
Yep. All right, so I think that was it. Yeah, that was it for the SS4A. So I'll switch into kind of our current work. So focusing in on the Woodman Gateway project and feasibility study. So feasibility study is the ODOT term for the study that happens ahead of major improvement projects. So with the feasibility study over on the left, I've kind of broken out the different sections, if you will, and steps that we end up going through. So one of the first things that we're working on right now is a public involvement plan. With that, we will be developing a list of stakeholders to contact, just as we did with the SS4A, to gain input, help provide a little guidance to us on the study itself. But then we'll also be going back out to the public later this year to present the findings of the study, again, gain input, get their thoughts on the concepts that have been developed, solicit input, and then we will sit down and have discussions and try to get to a preferred alternative. So as I mentioned, we recollected traffic counts a month or so ago. Those are getting approved by the state currently, and then we will be looking at safety analysis, looking at the trends that we're seeing out there with the current crash data, and then developing a list of alternatives, evaluating those. When we go through the evaluation, we're looking at not only project costs, we're looking at right-of-way impacts, we're looking at environmental impacts, we're looking at the safety benefits, and trying to focus in on the one that best satisfies the most options for us on the project. And then coming out of the study, we will have an updated phasing plan. It may still have 5 separate projects. We may end up deciding that we need to break it up into 6 or 7, or we may say, no, we can do this in 3. But that will all be one of the deliverables coming out of our study. One thing I want to point out, as we started to look at things, I mentioned before that with the crashes, when we looked at 2020 and 22 data, that we didn't have any fatalities within this segment of Woodman. And that story has unfortunately changed. Since they were in 2023 and 2024, but in the last 3 years, there have been 4 fatal crashes within this road segment. So to me, that just highlights the need for something to be done in this section to improve it, to try to curb those fatalities, reduce those serious injury crashes. So the graphic on the left is isolating down just the serious injury crashes, which are the purple dots, and the fatal crashes, which are the red dots. The map on the right is showing you all of the crashes that get logged in the system. So, and I'll say that the data that was in ODOT's TIM systems did not include 25 data, so when you see something like this presented again, you may see even more dots, but we know that there were not any additional fatals within 2025. So next steps. Just a quick slide on this. So we're currently working on this feasibility study. That is intended to wrap up here in February of 2027. At that time, we'll be working on our preferred alternative selection, moving into a phasing and implementation plan, and then stepping off into engineering design of something. To be determined yet, it will likely not be everything within that whole segment. We'll be having to work with the city to determine which segments to go first, based on timeline to engineer it, permit it, how much it costs, and then working, a funding strategy for those costs. So right now, kind of best assumptions, you're looking at around 18 months to get through engineering. We typically reserve a year or so for right-of-way acquisition. That process is fairly lengthy and drawn out. And then that kind of sets you up to be somewhere in around 2030 before anything would go out to bid and construction would begin. So that was everything with Woodman. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Nate? As you can see, this is a very lengthy process.
I think you covered that very well. Any questions that I would have had you answered as you went through?
Thank you.
Agreed.
Nate, what do you think would be the timeline on some of the conceptual options that have been talked about, but then are now maybe going to be informed by the increased traffic count because of return to work with Right Pat, and then sadly, some of the traffic incidents that you cited from the last couple of years?
So concept-wise, we're looking kind of Q4 as to when we would take things to the public. We're probably going to have an engineering gut feel, in the next couple of months as to what we had developed before and whether or not we think it's going to work or not. So, from a gut feel standpoint, we can coordinate and let you all know what still seems possible and what has kind of fallen off the list. But it's I would say late Q2, heading into Q3, we would have some concepts developed, new pictures to look at, if you would, in terms of what we think are going to be solutions here.
So potentially later this year?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Nate or are other members of your team going to chime in, or are they just here for backup if needed?
Moral support.
Moral support. Well, we certainly appreciate the time and the depth of the presentation, and I think it answers a lot of questions, and I'm hopeful that a lot of folks in the community who are able to watch this can see just how much goes into a road project like Woodman-Harshman, because it's enormous.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys. And then our second presentation, Ms. Manager?
Yes. Phil Downing and Chad giving the presentation. I guess they're both going to come to the podium. They are our consultants and serve as the executive director for our CIC. And so this evening, they have a presentation for council.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, great to see you all, the new and the older councilors. Welcome. I bring my support up with me because I may need more moral, I may need physical support too. Since some of you saw me, you may know I had eye surgery. I'm doing a lot better. If I squint a little bit, you'll understand why. Left eye's not so good. The right eye, I'm seeing pretty well. So apologize if you see me doing that. There's no intent on anything there. So we certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight, give you an update on what the CIC has been doing over the course of the past year. As most of you know, the CIC was reinvigorated in 2024 after a hiatus. It was initially chartered back in the 1990s and late 90s, had been reconstituted several times, and as the One Riverside Plan and Council had seen, it could be a very useful vehicle again. So what does the CIC do?
Hey, Phil, can you talk right into the microphone for me?
Excuse me, usually I'm loud enough. CICs acquire vacant tax delinquent properties, and that's very important. Our focus is on properties that have become significantly tax delinquent, the ones that you see where the question usually comes up, what's going on with that property? Why isn't the grass mowed? Why is it falling down? Why are there issues? Oftentimes, it's not only tax delinquency, but there may be a myriad of other issues up behind the property that we also help untangle. Title problems, environmental issues are pretty common with the era, the age of the properties. Properties getting into stress, usually there's an impetus and there's a variety of other things that occur. So it's not infrequent to see a variety of liens and other things that need to be dealt with. So what do? We help assemble parcels into buildable sites, whether that's larger parcels or smaller parcels. There's different strategies, obviously, for neighborhood parcels, commercial parcels, or properties that can be repurposed, possibly through remediation, and put back into a productive use. So the process is to really return the properties back to buyers that are going to invest in them, put the properties back into a productive use, back on the tax roll through a development agreement. So the governing agreement for the project, for whatever somebody needs to do, will be codified. That codification usually comes with a revisionary clause, so the property would return to the CIC if there's a reason that the person couldn't follow through. Negotiations to make sure that there isn't, a practical solution would be tried, but obviously we need to have the property moving forward. Who currently oversees the CIC? It's a 5-council board at the current time. The board is under discussions to add 2 more citizen at-large positions. That's something that will be going to the CIC board to talk about at its upcoming meeting on the 21st. Next slide here. I should make sure I know how to do this. Current board. We have many of the esteemed folks in the room tonight. Michelle Elliott from your finance department serves as the financial representative. Anthony Rogers, who is on your planning commission, also serves as a member, and Manager Lytle. All of these positions are considered to be appointments of the city, so either municipal positions. What does the CIC own? Through a great deal of discussion, planning with the administration, our input, looking at the property clusters that were out there, 41 properties were determined to be moved to the CIC at the end of 2025. They were recorded in 26 in February. So there's a total of 41 properties, and we'll show you a map where the clusters of those properties are here in a second. And to augment that, the CIC has powers under Section 1724, which allow it to actively foreclose on tax delinquent properties where the tax delinquency fees, mowing fees, things like that, actually exceeds the value of the property, so the auditor's value. We filed on 7 of those properties. Those properties are majority in neighborhoods, and they align with where the city either has ownership of properties or is currently doing CIC activities to demolish, remove blight, and potentially bring properties back online for infill and or side lot types of uses. Where are we working right now? The Springfield Innovation Corridor. Obviously, the presentation that preceded us shed a lot of light on the need for traffic patterns, future improvements in that corridor, its importance as a strategic site in the community, and the fact that a variety of things could come together to really augment what is a major draw right across the street that at its peak had just under 1 million visitors, referring to the museum. And our latest data after COVID, it's clawing back, and we're probably seeing close to 800 to 900,000 visitors this year. So that's an extreme opportunity, has to be carefully designed and developed into the overall fabric of what's going on in the Springfield Innovation Corridor. So that would include this building, sites across the road, and the old Harshman properties, which align with that. The other area we're looking at right outside of Gate B is what we were terming the Huber Avenue workforce housing. This is in the early stages of discussion, but we're thinking there is more housing, low-density multifamily, which could mean 2-story, 3-story. Try to get workers at the base a place where they can have a very nice, affordable neighborhood, augment additional retail, commercial as it may be, into the future planning of that. And then the Glendine Avenue corridor, there were several sites that were to the north side of the current Ryan Homes development down there. The rear portions are in the floodplain, so that makes some of the development difficult. But the front side also, we believe, has a high propensity for being able to be developed in a multifamily, light density residential fashion. And along Old Harshman, as I mentioned, long-range city center concept, obviously the transportation corridor there fits into that type of planning, getting control of those sites for future use and enabling the design of kind of a more civic hub. This gives you an idea of the sites. I digress. I missed one area. We took several sites that a commercial development. He's got a mind with him. Okay. wanted us to take down on Springfield at the entrance to the community on that corridor. So as you can see, those sites, it's an old rail bed. There's some alignment issues down there. We want to try to work to realign those, give the commercial venture that is down there the opportunity to fix up their parking lot and improve the business. So that's an area where we'll have to be involved. We talked about the Glendine parcels. We think that could be a strong fit with the development to the south that's going on. And then obviously the properties up Old Harshman, and then the cluster along Huberville, the old Center of Flight site. So those are the first 41 properties that we're taking.
All right.
So I'll let you go kind of through the process here real quick.
Yeah, at this point, I'd like to jump in and talk about the other activities outside of the taking ownership from city properties, using the tax foreclosure process. Again, as it was indicated earlier, like the county land bank, the Community Improvement Corporation is under the Ohio Revised Code eligible to file tax foreclosure on properties. And the only types of properties that we're going to be going after are those that are abandoned. There's no point of contact or ownership or interest. And ultimately, again, as it reiterated earlier, the delinquency exceeds the auditor's value. And the great thing about this process, for anyone who's never heard about this before, any owners get ample opportunity to come back to the property and move it to a court-type sheriff sale process or pay back the lien. So worst-case scenario when it comes to this is we're able to get a property owner back and engaged with their property with this noticing. The best-case scenario for the community is that that property owner comes back, but rarely does that situation happen in our experience in working with other community improvement corporations or land banks. And this property will then receive a clean and clear title, eliminating the back liens on that property and coming to the CIC for disposition for what the city and the community want to see happen with that property. So effectively, it's a cleaning of the slate and just a transfer of ownership. Those prior owners are not impacted on their credit score. This doesn't, give them a black mark on any of their financial purposes. It's just a clean way to say, look, you've lost control of the property, to be able to move it forward and get it into a position where it is developable without paying back those back taxes, which oftentimes make it so the deal wouldn't structure. This is the best way forward that the state of Ohio has used, and this tool has been used regularly. You may be familiar with the NIP demolition program, which came through the community that the county land bank administered to demolish abandoned homes. This is the same tool that they used for this. So this can be a fundamental tool in aggregating sites. The good news for Riverside is, unlike some other communities, it doesn't have as many vacant tax delinquent parcels that are eligible for this tool. So it'll be one of a few options that we have to acquire property and put it into a better disposition effectively. We're happy to discuss any more of the details around this process, but we're ramping up slowly and strategically with the board's oversight and in line with the city's objectives, what parcels we go after through this tool to get them back to productive disposition.
So obviously, we were talking about the Springfield Innovation Corridor earlier. Wanted to dive a little deeper into that and talk about the site that affectionately has been called the Center of Flight site for a long time. That site is very key to the future build-out. We believe its significance, obviously positioned across from Site B, from Gate B, lower cost than Beaver Creek, which I think is a site selling point. And the fact that the CIC can work with the city hand in hand to really leverage incentives, work to attract the right tenants, and get that site developed. There's some major employers, as you all are aware, Joby Aviation being one of them, that are significantly attracting and creating additional demand for both suppliers and folks in the general supply chain. So that's something we want to be prepared to catch that wave. It's happening now, and we believe that we're going to be positioned to take care of that. So the city has graciously made an investment in the CIC, and the CIC is really building institutional capacity. What Riverside gets back is the opportunity for multifamily housing, commercial retail, office, light manufacturing, as we've explored. Typically, a full economic development department, redevelopment department, is going to be somewhere between $250,000 and $400,000 for a typical community like this. The investment that the CIC is making in the program this year to hire us is $115,000 a year. The city's investment in past years, and we're hoping that you make that investment again going forward, is $100,000. The CIC's budget is balanced because of additional fundraising, grant activity, and other things that we need to deliver and bring to the table. So what's ahead? Right now, we've got 7 foreclosure filings with the county treasurer. We're working with specific property that came through the CDBG program. It's now been slated as a redevelopment property. We've got a little bit of title work, hopefully some other things that'll get cleaned up on it quickly with the treasurer, but it's a significant opportunity and an outcome for a rehabilitation project. Additional properties are making their way through the process that can be strong rehabilitation properties in the second tranche of CDBG. And we're commencing on the side lot program. So as properties come into the neighborhoods from either the city saying we would like to move a city property to the CIC to redevelop, or the CIC takes action like on the 7 properties we talked about, those properties need a program. So we're either looking at the side lot program or the infill program. And we'll talk a little bit more about the infill program as we go. The economics, I think, are favorable in several neighborhoods. Obviously, we've got to put a property with a price point that is affordable. And given the new UDO that's been approved, I think there are opportunities to bring appropriately sized and priced properties in as infill into Avondale, Floral Park, and a variety of other neighborhoods in the community. Coming soon, as we've talked about, we're doing the pre-development work on Center of Flight, Valley Pike Corridor, a great deal of sites in that area that are tax delinquent, that are city-owned, that can have action taken on them, looking for a redevelopment plan there. The EPA engagement on the Trey Danis site, as you all probably know, there's a $1.2 million US EPA grant that the land bank is administering for that property. That's going to be a key component once we find out exactly what the issues are on the site. The remediation plan can also be funded under the existing grant, and then we'll have the opportunity, if the programs are still available, to apply for Ohio Brownfields funding.
Phil, can you go back a couple slides to the large map you had with the
Certainly.
CIC-owned properties, just to point out to folks where the landfill is that we're referencing so they can get an idea of the location and the scope?
Pointer?
The pointer on that's not going to work with the screen, unfortunately.
So the property we're talking about,
It's right here.
this property right here.
It's very large,
Yeah, it's 40, just under 40, well, right around 40.
very large parcel.
There's been a variety of activity on the property. There's still existing, there's documented by code enforcement. There's active use of the property at the current time. There's a trailer, a hunting blind. There's a variety of other things. Somebody's mowing the grass occasionally. So the property's in active use, which is what happens typically. But there are, and many of you I've even talked about, Councilor Gabby, I think you've told me stories about people, typically dumping back there, and, that's just kind of the way it's been. So finding out exactly what's been dumped over the period of time that it was the active landfill is really a key to sorting out exactly what it's going to take to put it into what could be a productive use. Now, there are a couple other issues we're dealing with. The property is significantly tax delinquent. Off the top of my head, I think it's around $68,000 tax delinquent now. The tax bills probably come back. They go to a post office box over at the Green that is so it's actually a mailbox office where Danis Environmental receives its mail, although Danis is a defunct Ohio company. So that site is obviously very key. Mayor?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that perspective and just getting an idea of some of the size of the properties that are in that same cluster that we're already looking to move some properties that have presented issues in the past.
All right, any other questions?
I have a question. On your
I feel you.
development agreement, and I'm not even going to try after the word for the clause.
Reversionary.
Thank you. Can we get a copy of that sent to us so we can just see what that entails? And who actually, was this something that the Downing Group, like, is typical, or is that something that, as a part of the CIC, the other CIC members helped to?
Great question. And this is a best practice that's been used really in the land banking industry. And it even goes back before that. Whenever a municipality or a local jurisdiction or community transfers a property on, they want to know that there's going to be an outcome delivered with that property. And even in some recent examples, we're exercising this right now in other communities that we represent. Specifically, there was someone who took a dilapidated 3-unit property. We transferred them a parcel so they could add a garage there to meet code requirements. Well, that project has fallen through, and now instead of that community losing control of that site, which could now be positioned for another benefit to its area, and waiting for that property to go through foreclosure and really pulling the community down, we're exercising the development agreement reversionary clause, which in this case is really, they're going to transfer it back to us for what we bought it from them for. So each development agreement may have a little bit of a different scope and process depending on what the development it is, what the property is. So there will be some slight variation, but the overall intent is that, number one, it's going to be legally sound, that there's a real process that can be attributed to this. And number two, there's always a limitation to this. If somebody starts building a home on a vacant lot, for example, we're not going to be able to take that back. But if they never move forward, let's say within a 3 to 5 year time frame that we establish, then we've got the ability to go back and say, hey, you tried, you gave it your best shot, but the community needs this back so we can try again with someone else. That's the overall intention.
And obviously, we're going to be reaching out to them, trying to find out what's going on, trying to offer assistance in any extensions that may need to be granted. I think, that would be something that would go back to the CIC board. So the decision-making authority is always vested with the CIC board. We're just advisors.
And from my perspective, I would just add that the reversionary clause is important because we don't want to take a problem property and hand it to somebody who's going to continue to make it a problem. We want to hand it to somebody who's going to do the right thing, whether they're expanding their side yard or they want to develop it into a single-family home. We don't want to turn over properties to folks who are going to make it worse for the community. And having that ability to claw back if you don't perform correctly is in my mind, an important tool for us to have so folks know that we want you to be good for our community. We don't want to just give you something and then you either make it worse or you end up not paying your taxes. And as Chad and Phil said, a few years later, we try to go through the same foreclosure process with those new folks. We want to be able to have it written down. If you don't perform these things within this time frame, we have the ability to claim the deed back. It reverts back to the original owner, which would be
Right.
the CIC.
He pretty much, or they, whichever, pretty much explained, because, I was just asking, like, say you have somebody that pays $10,000 for a vacant lot and has plans on building a house, and then they get laid off from their job or whatever happens, and now it's not even feasible. But he said that they would buy it back for the same. That's what I was saying. I would hate to see
Correct.
one of our residents or whoever out out 10,000 because of a situation. So,
Yeah.
yeah, they explain
Yeah.
that, yes.
I have a question along those lines. So if you're in a residential area and there's a blighted property, it's been demolished, it's just a vacant lot now, do residents still, under some circumstances, have the option to purchase those lots to expand their yards, not to develop more on it, just to expand the
To
yard
side
space?
yard expansion.
Yes, and that's going to be on a case-by-case basis, because not every property that's been demolished is necessarily going to be under the ownership of the city or the CIC. So the first step would be that they would inquire with the CIC in the city to learn about what the status of the property is. If it's in the city or the CIC's ownership, or it's one of those properties that we can file foreclosure on, that would undergo the side lot programming activities. Now, some of the consideration and the board's policy, enforced by the city here is going to be, which lots do we retain for potential future infill development so we can create new housing opportunities and continue to reinvest in the neighborhoods? But there's certainly going to be those lots, whether it's because of their size or other attributes, that they're perfect for a side lot transfer. So we'll work to triage that effectively with the guidance of the board, influenced by the city's planning policies, of course. But ultimately, yes. And then if it's a property that, let's say, is not quite tax delinquent eligible, but is something they're interested in, the CIC can flag that, watch that property as it matures through the delinquency process. And then there's a couple other pathways that we can begin to look at that could change with different changes at the State House, quite frankly, with different laws. But ultimately, the answer is yes, that if there's an interested side lot opportunity, we're the best entity to work with on behalf of the city to help evaluate the best options for that individual.
Okay, thank you.
I think some parcels, that's the best outcome,
Absolutely.
is that you essentially get a good landowner next door who will take care of the whole property, and then the city's not cutting the grass, and it's not sitting tax delinquent anymore.
Under the development agreement, do you know what is the time frame that someone has to actually build a home on a vacant property that they purchase?
And the development agreement is still under final approval, looking at becoming on final with the CIC board, but what we've put out is 2 years. Okay, there could be extensions to that. Residential versus industrial, obviously, I think there would be differences. I'd be more lenient on residential
Right.
than I would on industrial. I want to hold somebody to account. If they say they're going to go out and stick a shovel in the ground in 6 months, I want to see it. So, that's the way I think we would look at that. And just to note, oftentimes, the CIC will need to wait until the demolition process has completed and then it's been added to the tax roll, because the CIC doesn't want to go get a property where the demolition is going to be then added to the tax roll and have that debt on them. So
Right.
there's some timing issues that we have to deal with a variety of county authorities on to make sure those timings are right. So, you may see a property that gets demolished with the CDBG funds. Rest assured, we're watching it. We'll be communicating that to you. The city communication is great. We're hand in hand on these properties, so that's very exciting for us.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can you bring back the slideshow? So in the coming soon section, I just
Yeah.
want to understand what you're saying here. You say that 4 parties with active purchase applications are under review, but you say it's coming soon. I'm confused.
Okay, so what's coming through there is people are actually, saying, hey, CIC, you've either got a property or there's a property that I would like to help you pursue for me because it's tax delinquent. And the CIC can also do that with a private party that wants to take the property through foreclosure. So we've got 4 different applications on parcels in Riverside right now where folks would like to take active development steps.
Are those 4 among the 7?
No, those are addition,
Okay.
okay?
So,
We haven't even begun to market, the 7 or the 41. These folks have just kind of actively found us out, said, hey, either the city owns that property or we hear the CIC is getting that property. Word travels, and so, we're advancing those discussions. We've got, the process is, and you will find on the CIC's website, there's a pre-application.
so the applications have been made,
The applications have been made.
and the thing that's
pre-app-
coming soon is that'll progress.
Right, coming soon. And they're, yeah.
Second question. You mentioned the Northrop Grumman building, but I didn't really understand the context. What was that illustrating?
That was illustrating that there are active properties being built in the region. You know,
Okay.
And it's been recently. We've seen active development in the periphery of the base.
Okay.
And obviously, there are some major plans right now to take place on the base, which would have a major impact on Riverside. So as we track those and other, you know, proposed developments, that some are moving forward, some are, you know, a little bit stagnant. And all of that comes into play kind of in the real estate ecosystem here in Riverside and around, you know, this quadrant of the community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The CIC typically meets the third Thursday of the month here at City Hall, typically in the afternoon, but that time has changed in the past based on availability of members. It is open to the public, and if anyone has further questions about that, please make sure to either let somebody on council know or let staff know. We'd be happy to answer those questions and invite you to a meeting. Or you can just come on your own.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions for Phil and Chad, I don't want to rush them off, but a lot of information.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. If there's any citizens with us tonight who wish to speak on an agenda or non-agenda item, there are forms in the back of the room to fill out and turn in to the clerk. We will move along to approval of our meeting minutes from our April 20th council meeting. Is there a motion to approve these as published?
So moved.
Just second it.
I'll second it.
All right. Defer to the lady. We have a motion from Ms. Fry and a second from the deputy mayor to approve the meeting minutes as published. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We will move on to public comment for agenda items, of which we have one slip turned in, and that is Mr. Joe Lemke of 1519 Brant Pike. So thank you, Mr. Lemke, for being with us this evening.
Thank
Please
you.
state your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Joe Lemke, 1519 Brant Pike. Appreciate the opportunity. I may be getting a little ahead of things. On the lighting, I read through the packet, which I want to say thank you very, very much for explaining all of that, because I think that's what we need as citizens. Couple of notes that were put into my mind is, first of all, I'm taking it that this is just the bill we currently owe. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. What was not mentioned, at least I didn't catch it, was are there any additions in the works or deletions in the works, which would affect the amount of money that we're actually paying for lights? So if we remove lights, we get money. If we add lights, we pay. Also, any of the major roadways, like Brant Pike, Troy Pike, those major intersections that are state avenues, are they being taken care of by the state, or are we having to pay that bill? Just a couple of questions, don't need answers, just something to think about that may change the amount of money that we're actually spending as we move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Can we defer to? Can we answer any of that?
Oh, yeah, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if,
No, I mean, is there anything
Is
that can
there-
be answered at the moment?
is there anything you can speak to on that, Beth?
Beth, you look like you're eager to.
Well, I can give you a quick answer if we want me to. So
I would love that, thank you.
That's what I was getting the
Beth was
eyes.
over there like she was ready, she was ready.
I was
to-
getting
I
the
thought you were
eyes.
pointing. I was like,
so-
what is Cody doing?
Yeah. No problem. So there are no current addition or deletions that I'm aware of. So that list is pretty static. When you think of what usually brings addition and deletions, like new developments, we currently have one new residential development going on, but all those streetlights are privately owned, operated, and paid for. So no need to worry about that. State routes, when we became a city back in 94, 95, based on becoming a city, the city inherited all the responsibility for 201, 202, 835, Route 4, and 35. So we are responsible for all that lighting when we became a city. And so the list is what it is, with nothing I know of expected to change. I mean, there's always, maybe a pole gets replaced or updated, but just minor.
right. Thank you, Beth. So we will move along to new business, of which we have one resolution this evening, and it is on street lighting. So I will ask the manager to just give a brief synopsis on, and we've just been talking about it, but maybe just a quick, brief rundown of what it is that we'll be voting on tonight.
So this evening before you is a 7-year contract. Riverside is fortunate to have gone out to bid with the Miami Valley Technology and Communications Group. And during the last council meeting, we did put up, as part of the PowerPoint presentation, a list of all those communities that are part of the bid as well. So back to kind of the questions that we just answered, it is covering 43 street lighting districts here in the city. So we appreciate the partnership with Miami Valley Technology and Communication Group, and they really did the heavy lifting for us. And so the new rate structure that takes us out over the 7 years, it will retro back in 2026 to January 1st at 5.5% increase, and then in 27 it'll be a 4% increase. 28 it'll be 3.25% increase, and then in 29, 30, 31, and 32 the increase is 2.75%. Thank you.
Okay. If there's any questions for the manager,
I have one. With this 7-year contract, will it still allow for the addition or deletion of districts if needed?
Yes, the contract is fluid.
Okay.
So if there is some sort of an addition or a deletion, so say we have, 3 new developments that, come in 2027, of course, I'm making that up. But, if we do, then we can roll that into this agreement. So Miami Valley Lighting is very cooperative in that. And, there are other communities that we did the joint bid with that certainly have a lot of developments in a year, and that all gets folded in.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Angel Patterson and a second from Ms. Fry. Any further discussion among members of council? Hearing none, all those in favor of Resolution 26-R-3097 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We will move into discussion items, and I'll turn it back over to the manager. What? Oh, sorry, I apologize. It's at the bottom of the page, and I'm not paying attention. I think the not paying attention part is more important. We have public comment for non-agenda items. I apologize. And first, we have Mr. Tim Gosnell of 12 Beatrice Drive for a non-agenda item. Thank you, Mr. Gosnell, for being with us this evening. Please state your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tim Gosnell, 12 Beatrice Drive. And tonight, guys, you get a break. It's not going to be stormwater. I do want to talk about it in a couple weeks. I got some plans, some things I'm working on. But what I want to talk tonight about is Dill Cemetery. For those of you who don't know Dill Cemetery, it's off of Valley Street, just about across from the bingo hall, up on the hill. And I'm a member of the BZA Board of Zoning Appeals, and we heard a case on that cemetery just Tuesday. And it was kind of disheartening because we had asked the person that wanted a fence if they would sign up a deal with the owner of Dill Cemetery so they wouldn't block the right-of-way. And that was like 6 months ago. He came back and said, I can't find the person. We had a lawyer, we don't know. We can't figure out who owns Dill Cemetery. And so how they voted is really not important. But what's important is that we had the cemetery sitting up there that the city of Riverside cut and maintained before we became a city. I'm sorry, I lied. Mattawa Township cut and maintained before we became a city. And then after we became a city, they decided they couldn't do it anymore. So I called Cody, tried to call some other folks in the city and couldn't get an answer. But I called Cody to kind of feel out whether it would be something that it's a cemetery and it has some fallen over tombstones and it needs work. It needs cleaned up. And so I'm asking the city would you at least entertain the motion of seeing if we can't do something and try to maintain that neglected. It's sad. If you can't find an owner, if it's true that you can't find an owner, maybe we as the city try to find an owner or to see if there is an owner, because this guy's going to block it off. And there's going to be no access to that. So if I found out 5 years from now that I had a relative up there and wanted to pay my respects, I wouldn't be able to do that. and you say, well, how do you know he's gonna block it off? We'll see. But just based on what I've seen so far and the other things that he's not doing, that's gonna happen. So I'm asking the city if you would take a look at that. I don't expect an answer tonight, don't expect, everybody to, hey, jump on, rally on, or no, we're not gonna do that. But please take a look at it and kinda, I don't know what happens with neglected cemeteries and things like that. And I know there's a couple other cemetery things going on in Riverside I've been hearing about, but this Dill Cemetery, I had no clue it was there until we had that hearing. I had no clue there was a cemetery up there.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right.
Guys, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Tim,
Thank you, Tim.
thank you for bringing this to our attention, because that's a pretty huge part of the history. I mean, there's Revolutionary soldiers
Yeah.
buried up, I mean, I don't know if soldiers, but back from that era.
Yeah,
buried.
Jesse, I don't
So
know
it's
who's up there. I
pretty
know there's
unique part of
folks up
Riverside
there.
history, so thanks for
And I just
bringing
think it'd be sad if we found out that somebody was related to you and you wanted to go and pay your respects and couldn't get there.
Right.
It's a unique part of Riverside history, or Mad River history, whatever.
Whoever's
side of it-
history, our history.
Our history,
Our
yeah.
history.
A lot
Yeah,
of people
our
don't know about, but it's a pretty unique part of our city.
I just think it's the right thing to do if we can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we can certainly do some investigating on the parcel, on the ownership history, and figure out what, as a city, with a cemetery that maybe doesn't have an active owner, what rights we have, what we could do.
Yeah, and I don't know how hard that attorney looked for an owner. I don't know. I mean, all I knew was what came before us.
Right.
And what we had to deal with was what we saw right there. But when I got home and got thinking about it, I'm like, guys, I can't just let this one go. I'm
Yeah.
gonna come back to council and ask you to at least look at it for us.
No.
Okay?
All right, thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Appreciate
you.
it, guys.
And next, we have Mr. Frank Smith of 4703 Byesville. Good evening, Mr. Smith. Thanks for being with us. If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Frank Smith, 4703 Byesville Boulevard. Yes, I talked to one of your police sergeants to get a paper for put in speed bumps. And he brought me this paper that was AI generated. And I can't figure out how to do it because I don't have a computer. I don't do computer stuff. And I'm asking the city for help. I need regular paperwork. Can I walk over there and show you this, what I got? I need regular paperwork. And I've got people willing to sign, people willing to sign for a petition to get speed bumps on Flanders. We've got people just riding up and down the street.
Can staff have a minute with this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we take a look at that, Frank? The paper, well, can we let staff take a look at it?
Here, I'll take it.
If you could give it to Mrs. Lytle.
Thank
We got
you.
Frank's number, right?
Yeah.
Because we need to get back with him on the proper process.
Yeah.
Is it
But
on- is
if,
it on
if
the-
we need to, we can get back to you on the proper process. I don't know if you have a petition in front of you or,
But this has been a big issue because I've lived there 18 years and people just fly up and down this street. I mean, kids are going to get killed. I almost got killed here a couple of weeks ago just bringing my trash can in from the curb. And it's getting ridiculous. And I've got neighbors that's willing to sign a petition because I've talked to them and they're willing to sign the petition, but I don't have a computer, I don't read and write very well, so I can't do this.
Mr. Smith, do we have a phone number on his
We
comment
do,
card?
we
Okay,
do.
that's all we'll need. We will do some research for you, and we will get, a staff member will get back with you.
Okay.
all right.
And zoning, there's some people living at the end of Byesville down next to the corner, right next to Smithville. There's two campers down there with people living in them, and their trash is garbage. And Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
you.
Thank you, Frank.
So Jesse will get back with you this week, and so will the chief. All right. We will move along. Now we can move on to discussion items. So I'll hand it over to the city manager.
First this evening, Niall will give a presentation on a CDBG funding grant application that we have the opportunity to apply for. Thanks, Naya.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Like it's been a long time since I stood here. Just on the side most of the time. All right. Yes, the Montgomery County Community Development Department has released their grant application for the Community Development Block Grant. They do this every year, but I wanted to share a little bit about the grant program and how we've used it in the past and how we work with Montgomery County on it. Oh, let me go back. That was too clicky. So what is the Community Development Block Grant, or as we refer to it, the CDBG? It is a federal program that comes from the Housing and Urban Development Department or HUD. And it is meant to provide funds for cities and counties to help low and moderate income residents across the country. Those funds can be used for housing to improve infrastructure and other projects such as demolition, which we often use in our own community. So again, what can it pay for? Sidewalk improvements, water lines, senior housing. We have used it for improving our parks. If you think about, there was a parking lot improvement in Roar in the past, and we've also put in the toddler playground. We've used it for demolition. That has been one of the key funding sources for our demolition programs, that and the Ohio Department of Development demo. And like I said, it comes for counties and for cities. You have to be of a certain size for a city for able to get funds directly. If you're not, then you work with your county to who distributes those funds on your behalf. So we are a city that works with Montgomery County to do that, and projects such as areas for low and income houses, neighborhoods that need improvement. So there are certain neighborhoods that are identified that can get this type of funding. So working with Montgomery County, there is a process that they receive the funds. They determine how the funds can be used and what type of projects that they will support. And because they're getting requests from all over the county. And then they work with us to get those applications in reviewed, and they make sure that once they approve the projects, that we're following all the rules that HUD has put in place for the projects, making sure they're meeting the right income levels, the right areas that have been assigned, things of that nature. So I said there's dedicated areas that can receive this funding. So those areas are outlined in red on this map that you see within our community. So they have named them, they're not always the names that we refer to them, but they call them Avondale, there is Riverside Terrace, Floral Park, and then Woodman 35 to the south. So I know it's a little older map, so I'm gonna just pause there so you can have a chance to see that. All right. So why it matters to us. Using these programs, especially with the demolition funds that we've used, has helped us to get rid of a lot of blighted houses. We have used it to upgrade some of our public infrastructure, like in the parks, as I mentioned, and create infill opportunities in our neighborhoods. So that's been really valuable for our communities. In the past, looking back, we've also used it to clean up some of the old trailer parks I saw. So we've used this for many years. So the application today that we're asking, that we have in draft form in your packet, is for 1514 Phyllis. This is a somewhat current picture. You can still see snow on the ground, but it has not changed much. We have gotten
Snow on the ground could have been from yesterday.
Yeah.
You're right, it
You
is.
know.
oh gosh, it did get cold. But we have received calls from the neighbors about glass coming down from it. Its siding's bad. We've seen just some rotting wood. It has just gotten worse and worse. But right next to it, there are 3 parcels that have concrete pads on them. So with the demolition of this structure, the removal of those concrete pads, we could have 4 parcels that are a really good infill site, being very close to the Air Force Museum, to Gate B, as Phil mentioned. This is a really good opportunity to get a larger parcel for development, maybe a larger multifamily house, or maybe several different smaller homes, but we have to make sure it's ready to be developed in. It's harder when you have like those concrete structures there, so getting it shovel-ready, as we like to say. So we are proposing, because we've already put some money into it, I put that in the packet as well, it's just under $7,500 that has been invested already. And what is remaining is the proposed estimated cost of what's remaining. So the demolition cost, what it would take to remove the concrete. And what's best practice is to put some money match in that makes our application more appealing. So we're saying 12% in addition to the match that we've already put forward. So that was that 10%, 10,000, excuse me, 10,000 there. So that's pretty much it. I'm open to questions.
The 3 concrete pad.
Yes.
That is the corner of Huberville and Phyllis, correct?
That's right.
So we essentially have the opportunity to present a shovel-ready site that is on the corner of Phyllis and Huberville, and then very close to Springfield, because the street kind of feeds off.
Exactly.
I'm just looking at a map right now and realizing all the things, how it all connects together.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Andy, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Yes,
I was
yes.
just, this will level the house, this will destroy the concrete, and will it and then grass will be planted on that spot until it's redeveloped?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
usually how it goes. Mhm.
Not a question, but a comment. I like the way this was presented to us in the packet. It clearly showed us our expenditures, past and future, project dates, photos indicating the risk posed by not completing the project. And I felt really good about coming in here and seeing your presentation today, like I was prepared for that. So I like the way it was presented in the packet to us today. So thank you for that.
Question.
Yes.
And she's got great earrings, too. I love the
Oh,
earrings.
yes.
Ohio
Right to
earrings
Dayton area.
with Dayton. That's a planner right there. You know,
Yes.
she's thinking about where she is, she's thinking about place. I think the other thing that's important is that the CDBG grant funding, it's a countywide program, so I feel like it's important for a place like Riverside to put together good projects like this to show our partners at the county that we're a good investment and that we can be good stewards. I think to Angel's point, putting together a presentation like this, when you do a CDBG grant and then you have compliance afterwards, you have to have all these ducks in a row to be able to do all the filing afterward that's needed, all the compliance that's needed for the reporting. So I think this is a good demonstration of not just how important the program is, but how well we can do it. So I think it's good for us to be having great projects like this, because geographically speaking, it's a lot of dominoes fall together here, which is very nice. So I'm glad that we have such a strong presentation here.
If this were to get approval from us, how soon after our approval would we start seeing wrecking balls taking that thing down?
So the application is due May 15th. That's why we have it before you now. And we would need just a motion to move forward with the submittal.
I will make a motion.
I make a motion to move this forward.
Second.
All right, so this is a motion for staff to move forward?
Yes.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for staff to move forward on the presentation and project that Naya presented. Any further discussion? I'm sorry, motion from Jesse, second from Frida. Any further discussion among members of council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right. Motion
Thank you
carries.
all.
Thank you, Naya.
Thank you.
And back over to the city manager.
Next on discussion items, we just wanted to follow up with some of the stormwater questions. I know there were some council members after the last meeting that had some stormwater follow-up questions. So at this time, our law director will walk through a few of those items, and then we're happy to take any questions that you may have during that.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Manager and Mr. Mayor and Council. Just to respond and provide some legal analysis to maybe get the discussion going regarding some of the follow-up that we received as staff from the last meeting. There were a few ideas and principles that I wanted to explain from a legal perspective, why they are as they are, and what options council may have in response to some of those inquiries. The main inquiry was related to the proposal for possibly a cap on non-residential stormwater fees. I had looked into what my framework is always, what does our ordinance as adopted say? And then how does that fit into any ORC state framework or any other legal principles? And my analysis was that very well-intentioned and laudable goal to try to put a cap on what a non-residential parcel can expect with respect to what a fee would be. I would have legal concerns about that. I think it is subject to an arbitrary or capricious finding by a court, because I don't know under the ordinance how there could be a reasonable and justified way to determine what that cap would be. So there would be an argument that the cap is just simply unreasonable, not justified, it's arbitrary, or my fear would be if there was a cap proposed and adopted in the ordinance that didn't have some data-driven information behind it to justify it, a non-residential parcel owner that fell below that cap would be charged in full for their stormwater fee. Another similarly situated non-residential parcel that generated a fee above that cap would then get basically a lower fee, and so the non-residential parcel owner that has to pay their entire fee that falls below the cap could have an argument that, why am I not getting a discount? Why am I not getting a break? It's just got some legal qualms to it that give me concern. That leads into the analysis of another suggestion that was brought up, again, in response to some feedback that you all have heard from the community with respect to non-residential parcels, and perhaps the idea of a credit system, similar to a credit system that exists in the ordinance for residential parcels. So again, looking at the ordinance as adopted in 2022, the ordinance allows for a uniform application of a credit system for residential parcels by way of certain mitigation measures that reduce or mitigate the impact of the stormwater on the overall infrastructure that the city maintains, by way of, as everyone knows, certain mitigation measures like rain barrels, rain gardens, reduction of impervious surfaces, et cetera. The overwhelming majority of parcels in the city are residential. So when the ordinance was adopted, there was an analysis that was, again, based on data, based on something that engineering studies and other types of objective studies could determine how much will these measures mitigate the impact on the city's stormwater infrastructure generated by a residential parcel. There's a objective, there's a uniform, and there's a reasonable way that can be applied to residential parcels. It's a little more difficult. Well, for one thing, it's not in the ordinance as adopted, so there would have to be language added to the ordinance by amendment to allow for a non-residential credit system. But some of the same issues present themselves. How is there a determination of what are the appropriate measures? There's just no data that was collected, because when the ordinance was enacted, a way to uniformly ensure that those mitigation measures were accounted for was much more easier to justify on residential parcels. So that's not to say at some point in the future there may not be data that, the data is coming in real time with this fee. So as I'm sure Ms. Moore's department can attest, the more that this fee is put in place, the more data will come in. I know council has committed to reviewing that on a regular basis. So once more data is collected, there may be an opportunity to look at something like that for non-residential parcels. My advice, and just again to kind of respond to some of the discussion that we as staff received after hearing some community feedback, is that it's not written into the ordinance currently, and it was not determined when the ordinance was enacted to be a way to ensure a uniform application. And again, the overwhelming majority of parcels are residential, so that was the place to start, at least collecting the data. So that's kind of just a response in general to the two inquiries that I recall receiving, and if that might generate questions or generate some further discussion, I'm happy to weigh in from a legal standpoint or defer to any of the operational leads on any follow-up questions.
I do have a little bit of information to share that may lead to questions. Whenever we were looking at the storm fees before and all of the research I did, I was focused more on residential and not so much as non-residential. So at the last meeting, when people were coming up talking about how much their bills were, I was really taken aback, like shocked at first. I didn't expect to see those types of numbers. So after some dialogue with Mr. Miller and some brainstorming and whatnot, I did some more research. Specifically for the non-resident rates, I looked up other cities in the area that have non-resident stormwater fees to see kind of where they stood versus where we stand. And I took the $700 bill, like that number, as an example that we kind of saw in Riverside. And a non-residence of the same size in the area for other cities would vary from $324 a quarter to $960 a quarter. So we're kind of in the high mid-range of that right now. Troy is the closest city in population, number of businesses, and median income with a stormwater fee that I could find in relation to Riverside, and our fee is actually almost exactly what theirs is. So that kind of put it in perspective for me. And then I also looked up the national stormwater, kind of the statistics nationally regarding churches and nonprofits to see how those were handled. And those are almost never exempt from stormwater charges nationally, because I know that's another thing that was asked, and that's almost never. From a resident standpoint, some of the common questions we've been getting recently were about gravel driveways and whether or not they would be deemed permeable or impermeable. If you literally Google, is a gravel driveway permeable or impermeable, without putting it in the context of stormwater or cities or anything like that, it says very clearly that gravel driveways, because of the amount of pressure applied to them, are impermeable surfaces. So that kind of answers that question that we've had. And then another question we've gotten a lot has been, well, if all of my water flows back onto my property, why am I charged for it, especially if I don't have storm drain systems at my residence? So I did a lot of research on that, and the University of Pennsylvania had an article that kind of put it in the best way for me. It described your property as like a sponge, and a sponge can only hold so much water before it overflows. So any surface area of that sponge you're covering up is draining even more water into the rest of the sponge, and it's going to cause even more runoff quicker, if that makes sense. And even if you don't have stormwater on your property, that water goes somewhere. So even if it's a mile or two down the road, it's draining somewhere, and it's joining either the natural waterways or our existing stormwater system. So those were all good questions I didn't know the answer to, that I wanted to be able to answer for people. So based on all of that research and whatnot, my recommendations that I would like to see us do sooner rather than later, and based on the feedback from the community, would be to start looking at some sort of residential, like those who qualify for the homestead, some sort of discount. I know we've talked about it in the past, but I think we need to look at that sooner rather than later and try to get something implemented. And then extending those residential credits. I know that Mr. Miller said that there's some issues with that, and we'd have to look at data. But when you look up stormwater, non-residential information on the national level, a lot of places have stormwater credits for their non-residential too, a lot. So those are my two main things I'd like us to look at sooner rather than later, would be the like homestead type of discount for residential and extending those credits to non-residential.
Jim, without putting you on the spot, would a homestead type exemption based on a specific characteristic, whether it be age or income level, would that jibe with the nature of the way the Ohio Revised Code treats assessments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I, just off the cuff, would have concerns about that and would want to do a deeper dive into that.
Okay.
That strikes me initially as, again, there are different laws and regulations about assessments like stormwater versus a homestead exemption that would be like a CAUV for agriculture or some other type of homestead exemption for audit purposes. I would want to ensure anything like that did not run afoul of equal protection or treat different protected classes differently. So assessments are meant to be equally applied. It would have to, I'd have to look into how to legally structure that and provide council with ways that I believe are legal and would prevent any sort of claims of inequity.
Yeah, but I think more investigation is certainly where I think, Angel, we'd like to go.
Yeah, there
figure
are
out.
other Ohio cities that do provide those type of discounts. I'm not sure how they go
Yeah,
about
I would
that,
want
but they
to, I
are.
would just want to know, like,
Yeah.
if there's the legal pathway to get there
Right.
is what I'd be very interested in knowing, so that we would at least have a path.
Right.
Because I don't want to build an expectation that it's just like property tax, where we don't necessarily have the amount of latitude that maybe you would with property tax. So I just want to make sure that if we find a pathway, let's talk about that, let's explore it. That's why we got Jim.
The homestead idea was just, it was actually a resident brought it up to me, and I have brought it up.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the point of that one was it was going to be easier, they thought, also on city staff, because
just
then
check
you're
if
not
you're-
taking in, like, income applications from people, like,
Yeah,
you
it's
know what I
just check
mean?
if the property has that exemption already.
Right. So, I
That's very
mean,
clean.
if that's not a feasible, way to do that after Mr. Miller looks, then I mean.
Or see what pathways he can come
Yeah,
up
we can
with.
definitely look at other avenues to get to that point, so.
No, I certainly think those conversations are ones we should be having, and I don't disagree at all. Other stormwater questions for our lawyer while he's on the clock? He's always on the clock,
Never off.
never off the clock.
Was there any discussion about the one pastor of the church had mentioned retention ponds on his property? How does that fall?
So.
Same non-residential?
Again, exactly.
Okay.
With the retention ponds being already existing, they're on non-residential parcels, so they're not subject to the current system of credits that we have for rain barrels, et cetera. As has been discussed, it's something that could be looked at. I just analyzed what our ordinance states right now, and then my role would be to provide options based on council's feedback as to ways to expand that or otherwise amend that within the bounds of the law.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no other questions at this time, I know Jim's never off the clock, so he's always taking questions from us, but I'll kick it back to the city manager to talk about community garage sales.
Last but not least, was the discussion at the last council meeting about adding a community garage sale event at the beginning of the summer. We have one at quasi the end of the summer, and so staff the next day after the council meeting got together to try to figure out how we could pull that off. Obviously, right now, our staff is very extended in what they're doing, since we're standing up an entirely new function, and those folks would be involved in this. So staff gets all the credit for coming up with a creative way to pull this off. So Nai's going to present that this evening.
Hi again, it's me.
Hi.
So I did work with Katie and April Davis to think of ways that we could make this a way to move forward. So if this is something that council wants to see realized, we were looking at the dates of May 28th through the 30th, which is a Thursday through Saturday. And instead of doing the traditional way where people would call in or sign up and we would take their name and their address and the days that they were doing and try to get address, and if they had changes, they would call back and staff would have to manage this large form and create a map, and there were several steps that would take. We would instead publish on Facebook and use Facebook as the primary tool of communication and organizing the event. We would also use Facebook to create an event page where people could post their own dates, their own address, and if there's any changes that they have, they could make those changes in real time, and people can scroll through and see like, oh, I want to make a route here. They can also say, hey, this is the things that I'm selling, and it's a way for the community to come together and really share and have that kind of networking. We also want to encourage people to follow the city Facebook group through this I'll call it spring-ish community garage sale. So that's kind of the idea that we have. Once the event is over, we can close it the Monday following and say it's ended, so there's not continued post, and we go back to the normal garage sale process.
That is a perfectly fine idea with
I agree.
me. I think that's
I like
great,
it.
and I will share the heck out of the Facebook post.
Awesome.
So if it works well, it may continue to be our format.
Yes.
That's,
Yeah.
I don't
For
see a
the
problem
years.
with that.
Yeah.
I don't see a
Yeah.
problem with
And
that.
Crowdsource the information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially with residents, be able to actually specifically comment like, hey, I got a lot of kids' clothes, or, I mean, that's
Exactly.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, it's
Yes.
almost like an ad then, and
Right.
it helps people, I mean, I'm sure they sit down, they look at the addresses, can see what's there, and then kind of map out where they want to go. So I think, assuming it's as positive as we think, we will
Right.
implement that a few months from now.
The
All
only
right.
concern that I would see from it would be from some of our senior citizens who don't use social media, but if there would be a way that we could include it maybe in our newsletter that we send out, as far as what the dates would be, but I don't know how they would be able to sign
That-
up for it that way.
I'm gonna look at Katie, but the
We
ship
won't have a
has,
newsletter in
yeah,
time.
Oh,
Previous to
okay,
that,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe moving
Newsletter
forward.
For either
Okay.
in time.
yeah.
Okay. All right, well, just so everyone joining us tonight knows that we do have a executive session on the agenda listed, so we will have council member discussion, then we'll move into exec. And we are taking action after, so I think we're going to leave the camera rolling, but we will reconvene to potentially take some action and then adjourn. So we will move into council member discussion, and I will start down to my right with Ms. Frida Patterson, not Cody. Cody.
I always look at him. I'm used to looking this way. I just want to thank staff for everything that they did work on for the community garage sale and everything. And I appreciate you. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Brown?
The only thing I have is I would like to maybe start some discussion amongst council and general public about possibly looking into some laws or governing about electric bikes and electric scooters in the area. I've noticed a big uptick, especially in my neighborhood, from them. And with, they're pretty quick, and I see a lot of kids zipping around on them without helmets and everything else on. So, you know, I've actually sent an email out to, I'm waiting a response from the director of the ER services at Dayton Children's just to see if they've seen a major uptick in like injuries or anything from it. But I know there's several municipalities and cities around us that's adopted laws governing these. So we could have some discussion maybe in the next few council meetings about that, maybe trying to get an action plan in place because, you know, so these things are getting quick and I just don't want to see kids getting hurt, you know, in the neighborhoods riding these things. So they're fun. I had one, but they are quick and don't want to see anybody get hurt really on them. So. But that is all I have. And may the force be with all of us.
I have nothing tonight.
If you haven't had a chance, check out Angel's Ride. It's sweet. Parking lot.
It's the purple
It's
beast
the
in the parking
purple-
lot. Yeah.
It is a very nice car. I'll set it in three-wheel before I leave.
I'll say, is it
Before
on-
I
is
leave,
it on three
not on
now?
the road.
This is my first council meeting since the community cleanup, and I want to thank Naya, and I want to thank Beth, and I want to thank the staff, the service department especially. They were out there most of the day. Bev was out there. Yeah, Ashley was out there. So many staff members of the city were out there on a Saturday helping with the community cleanup. And Rumpke provided a couple big trash bins. And Franklin Metal and Iron provided a big bin for scrap metal. And we collected the city collected a bunch of tires. I brought some donuts. That was my contribution. But it was just great to see our staff out there and how many people we interacted with and how glad people were that came through. And we're able to take advantage of that. So it was a fun Saturday. The weather was beautiful, and Naya and Kevin Miller were out there the whole time, so credit to them doing that on a Saturday. So I just want to say thank you. And I know that the residents who took advantage of that really appreciated it, so thank you to our staff.
I got nothing.
Nothing for me?
I want to say thank you for the cleanup. I definitely took advantage of it. Sorry I bothered you guys so much all that day with my 4 trips. Thank you.
That's what we have it for. Okay, so is there a motion and a second to go into executive session for the reason listed on the agenda?
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Maxfield and a second from Ms. Fry to go into executive session for the reason listed on the agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Maxfield?
Yes.
Ms. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Gaby?
Yes.
Ms. Angel Patterson?
Yes.
Ms. Frida Patterson?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes, we are in exec at 7:41 PM. We can just wave and do sign language to the people that can't hear us. We are out of exec at 7:58, and I believe there is a motion. The law director is going to instruct us on a motion.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor and council. The staff will be recommending 3 motions. I recommend that council act on each one separately. The first motion would be a motion to send an appointment letter to Jeremiah Gentry to serve as a regular member of the Board of Zoning Appeals for a term that ends April 6, 2027.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Gaby and a second from Mr. Maxfield. All those in favor of said motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor and council. The second recommendation from staff would be a appointment letter to be sent to Mr. Tim Cron to continue serving his current term on the Board of Zoning Appeals under the somewhat recently adopted charter amendment in November of 2024 as a non-resident with sufficient nexus to the community.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion from the deputy mayor and a second from Frida. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. I wanted to spread it around. You got the last one.
Thank you, Mayor and council. And one final recommendation from staff is seeking a motion to send a letter of appointment to Mr. Joe Lemke to serve as an alternate member on the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Motion.
Second.
A motion from Mr. Maxfield and a second from Quick Draw, Angel Patterson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned at 8 PM.